has brought turmoil back to the Eurozone this Tuesday. Markets have been going haywire throughout the day. You've got European leaders scrambling to come up with a response because the Prime Minister, George Papandreou, after keeping well and truly stum at last week's meeting in Brussels, says he will put the latest EU debt plan to a referendum. And as you were just saying, Stefan Simons, this is not being greeted with much joy in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, Germans have always been a little bit critical towards the whole European package. You will remember that the leaving the mark behind our historic strong currency. The whole Maastricht deal is built on the German perception that we are anti-inflation. We want a very strong currency, and of course that goes all the way back to World War I and the first big turmoil in history. The perception has been, at least in the public, that we've done our homework. We've done the Hartz IV package, cut back for about more than a decade on real income. And there's the Greek who don't pay the taxes. Why should the Germans pay for them Greek? And this development of this weekend will certainly reinforce that public perception.
All right, now the Germans have been at the forefront of negotiations. Angela Merkel leading the way, I think it's fair to say. But the Germans are also the ones saying that the ECB, the European Central Bank, cannot be a lender of last resort, and some other voices in Europe say that would solve the problem.
Well, that's just part of that German perception on currency and stability, that they want a clear separation between the role of the European Central Bank, and then that's why they came up with that new formula of a saver fund, which is attached to the European Bank and which will, fortunately or hopefully, fueled by third countries like China or India or emerging economies like Brazil. If this part of the deal is going to work, still an open question. But the Germans are certainly very critical of the idea that we just print more money and that the European Bank is taking on that role.
The financial orthodoxy of Germany is very high because of their past of high inflation. So they fear high inflation, but at the very same moment, many European countries...
But how are you going to have inflation in such a low-growth environment?
Because see, if the European Central Bank has the authorization from the Constitution, in the constitutional treaties, which is not the case for the moment, to purchase bonds in the primary market, that is to say, to finance the deficit of the European governments. This means that they will print money as long as the European member governments will need money, and this is inflation creation.
Yeah, and Professor Buhr is completely right. I mean, the Germans say, well, where is the discipline, the budgetary discipline going to come from if we have a bank standing up for us and printing just, having the press rolls as long as we want? I mean, and that includes France, that question.
Let's get the view from outside. Yeah, just is that
one thing to add to that, though, from London. I think the sort of general picture of how Germany has done its homework is correct. But there is something that's maybe not added in the picture is the German banks and French as well have invested massively in Greek, so creating a lot of that liquidity bubble as well. So I mean, in that sense, the banks have been making their own sort of European Union of credit default swaps. So you can say in that sense, Germany has sort of taken a stake in the way that the Greece's bubble has been driven forward. So it's just to say that there's that aspect as well.
Yeah, absolutely true. I would certainly agree on that. And today, the German banks are trying to wheel back and can pull out of that deal. But still, compared at least to the French banks, our stake, 89 billion euros, I think can be absorbed by the system. But you're certainly right. The Germans have played along the bubble market.
Right.
But I'm not sure that the Greek problem is just a problem of a bubble burst. It is a problem of taxpayers, of weak states, weak governments. It is a problem of a non-productive economy, and so on and so forth.
Okay, let's get the view from outside the Eurozone, because Xu Ting is in Washington. She's Senior Project Manager at Bertelsmann Foundation for North America. Now, we've got the Chinese president coming to Cannes tomorrow ahead of the G20, and we know there's been a lot of speculation that China will contribute to the European bailout fund, which is to be expanded and to be a trillion euros. Why would the Chinese invest in this mess?
Well, the Chinese investing in the European bailout is not a certain thing yet. There is a lot of speculation on this. And in fact, the Chinese government have recently come out and said, this is still all up in the air. There is no such thing as that China will save Europe. And in fact, the kind of investment that China can put in the European market has to be seen as an economic investment, and it has to be guaranteed in some ways of the safety of the investment. So not only China, but including Brazil, the BRIC countries, Brazil, India, and Russia, they have all come out and said that to make this kind of a guarantee for the investment, they prefer to make the investment or the fund through IMF.
Yeah.
But this idea has also been rejected by the US and the UK. So this whole thing for outside involvement is still completely up in the air. And given what's happening in Greece right now, it actually justifies the kind of concern from outside countries that any kind of investment right now to the European bailout fund is a little bit of a risky investment.
That's putting it mildly, Xu.
Yeah, and it's right now not just a economic crisis or debt crisis. It seems from outsiders that this is a political crisis.
Sure is.
The very fact that European countries can sort of turn the whole European summit result into complete uncertainty tells you from outside that the sort of institutional procedure in the European Union is now put in doubt. So who will be willing to, at this point, to throw money in this union that we're not even sure where it's heading to? So I think whether China can put in or not is still pretty much in the air.
This is quite remarkable, isn't it? Because 10 years ago it would have been the other way around. Is it safe to invest in China? And now you've got the Chinese looking at Europe going, not a very safe bet. It's extraordinary.
European, No, please go on.
But
go ahead, Xu.
Also there is a dilemma for emerging economies such as China, which was in some ways faced with at the early stage of the financial crisis, when the US market and Chinese economy is so much integrated. And right now, European Union is the largest trade partner with China. So if the European Union economy goes down, there is going to put a huge dent in the Chinese economy as well. So it's sort of back at the same question in 2008 when the Chinese are thinking, okay, should we just let this whole boat sink and we're on the boat? Or, should we put some kind of rescue investment, but we don't know where it is heading to?
I think given the huge surpluses of China, around $2.5 trillion, investing 100 billion euro is not a subject of finance. I think it is a matter of strategy. I believe that China doesn't want, of course, to invest without any strategical objective. They don't want to invest in European Financial Stability Fund only to earn a return, but an uncertain return, even if it is in a risk-free asset. They prefer investing in the IMF, because investing in the IMF, that is to say lending through the IMF, is a way for them to increase their bargaining power, because they will be shareholder of the IMF, and for that they will ask European countries to give them rights, because they will purchase those rights to increase their bargaining power and to have a managing director. So, of course, I think for strategic reason they prefer that.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, do we have to?
One at a time.
I think Professor Burra has put the finger on the problem. The Chinese certainly do want more input and want more power, but certainly not at every price, as Xu just said. It's a high risk investment. China has about 7 times the money of the FMI, so yeah, it could deal with a few hundred billions for the European. But is it ready to lead? And if you look hear what is coming, the sounds coming from Beijing, it doesn't sound as much. The foreign ministry just said this Friday, we believe the difficulties are temporary and the Europeans should rely on themselves to resolve the crisis. Certainly, the Chinese is not yet in a position to take openly the lead of the savior for the world, and you don't have to go to the philosopher Sun Tzu and his treaty on war. Bismarck is just as good. Countries don't have friends. Countries only have interests.
Right, quite right. Jonas in London, you wanted to add something there.
Yeah, no, I think the fundamental point for the Chinese is definitely safety. I mean, they have to explain their investments they make with their currency reserves at home as well. And they burn their fingers both on dollars that used to be a AAA investment, and when they invested in Wall Street in 2007, then afterwards in the financial crisis went downhill. So there's a lot of focus internally in China on which is basically the retirement fund for China, how is this invested with an aging population as well. So yeah. I think the sort of safety of investment and being able to explain that at home, which is also why we hear these messages of sort of get your house in order, which is also partly for internal consumption, for saying we're of course not going to lend anything before we have full assurance of our investments. And on that note, because the Chinese are risk adverse, I mean, we should distinguish here with the 3 trillion they have in currency reserves between their stocks and their flows. In stocks, they have quite a lot already put into dollars, and there's no way they're going to move this out, which would rattle the market in an already uncertain situation. So it's the currency reserves that they accrue where more of this could go into euro. And here again, it would be with the same sort of, and so here we're talking about much smaller amount. I mean, they've been buying up in the EFSF. All right. But these are quite sort of small amounts and not at all sort of these sort of several hundred billion money that's been talked about.
Xu Ting, you wanted to come in there?
Oh yeah, we have to also understand that 40% of the European Financial Stability Facility Fund has already been invested by Asian and emerging countries, and any kind of significant amount of investment will be required to be able to put a significant support for the current bailout. Will require significant amount of funding to come out of China. But for example, the 400 billion of US dollars of the sovereign fund by Chinese investment corporation, it's already fully invested. So unless you're talking about not as much of money that can really help, you have to be looking for all kinds of different resources.
And it seems to be we're kicking decision-making up the chain. I mean, you've got Greece deferring to Brussels on how to run its economy. Are you going to now have the Eurozone deferring to Beijing on how to run the Eurozone economy?
Because if in the cases that we did not ask for the BRICS to come and to step in, bringing their fresh money, countries like France, Italy will have to put the money in the UFSF. And for that reason, they will have the risk to be downgraded the same week, because they are in a level of debt that is very critical. And for that reason, they want fresh air and not increasing the level of debt with increasing the risk of downgrade.
Xu Ting, if I could come back to you, we are heading towards the G20 over the next few days. What do you think China will be pushing for at those talks?
Well, I think currently the Chinese government is sort of coming into this discussion from a more real economy perspective. So they will probably look for more access to the European market, to American market. They probably want to downplay the role of Chinese currency appreciation. Mm-hmm. And the Chinese investors are right now looking for outside sort of a market to direct Chinese foreign direct investment. This way they can get further high-tech industries, get into high-tech industries, and also enlarge their hold in the foreign market. So I think those are going to be the kind of issues that the Chinese leaders will want to present at the G20.
It seems that this G20 is going to really highlight how the balance of power is shifting from Europe, where we're struggling with debt and high unemployment and low growth, to Asia, particularly China, where they have all the money, they've got the budget surplus, and they're looking to invest.
Yeah, but as Xu Ting just said rightly, and the Chinese will not take an overtly political role. They will stay as much as they can away from the touchy questions, because then automatically the question of the reappreciation of the yuan will be on the table. There might be unpleasant things like human rights, the problems with Tibet, all this what might be talked about. No, the Chinese will take a step back and say, well, we're looking at this from a purely economical point of view, and we'll only make investments which are sound. And for the time being, why should you invest massively into a fund which is even perceived a bubble in Europe, while you have concrete economic subjects to put your money into. Sink the money into EDF Suez as they just did last week. Here you have sound investment, as Mr. Schuting said. They open the markets and they give you the possibility to acquire more technical know-how.
There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of volatility at the moment, Sofiane. When you look at what's going to be happening over the next few days, what concerns you the most? What are you most worried about right now for the Eurozone?
It is true that the level of uncertainty and volatility is very high, which pushes the stock markets downwards. But my problem is that with this new road of the referendum, there is a possibility of an exit strategy for the first time of a state member. And for that reason, this will open the door of additional riskiness and contagion that will affect other countries. But on the very same way, I think that if a country like Greece go out Eurozone, it will be better for them, less painful. They will not have a freeze on the pension, cut on the wages, /expanding. It will just be a question of currency.
For you, a default, disorderly or otherwise would be the right thing for Greece at the moment.
They already defaulted, actually.
What do you think about that, Stéphane?
It would be the end of the Eurozone as we know it today.
This is the problem.
And for the time being, Merkel, Sarkozy, and all the others have tried to pursue the vision that at all cost this new union that politically changed really the face of Europe in this new century, that this has to stay and that there has to be an asset, political asset, there has to be further integration and will go forward to make Europe a new force politically. One little decision from Athens has showed us how incredibly wobbly this whole construction has been, and it might be very much the end of the European zone as we've seen it.
All right, on that note, we're going to have to wrap things up. Stéphane Simons, Sofiane Abboura, Nikos Vernikos in Athens, Tsuting in United States, and Jonas Perot-Plesner in London. Thank you very much indeed to you all for being with us tonight. Thanks to you for watching. That wraps up tonight's debate. François Picard will be back with you in this chair tomorrow night at the same time. But for me, it's thanks very much for watching and goodbye. Stay tuned.